Alright, hey guys, we're in 1 Kings chapter 3 today, and this is kind of a famous passage if you've ever studied, King David, King Solomon. Um, this is something that kind of you've probably heard before, but it is something that really stands out and is kind of profound and really speaks to some of the problems that we have today. Basically what's happening here is that Solomon has taken over the kingdom for King David. King David has passed away. His son Solomon has taken over, and basically he's kind of doing diplomatic relations and things like that with the king of Egypt, with the Pharaoh. And he has the daughter come over into Egypt and, kind of witness how they live and what they do and so on and so forth. So he's kind of building bridges with Egypt and stuff like that. But there's a couple of things that really stand out in this chapter about Solomon. And in verse 3 we see it says, "And Solomon loved the Lord, walking in the statutes of David his father, only he sacrificed and burnt incense in high places." And the thing that I really wanted to point out here is his relationship with the Lord. Solomon loved the Lord, and he walked in his statutes, the two of those going hand in hand. It's a little difficult to make the claim that I love the Lord, but I live a life that is completely counter to everything that he says. I mean, the two statements don't go hand in hand. It goes hand in hand with what Jesus said, rather, that you'll know them by their fruits. And just to kind of, not to get off on too much of a rabbit trail, but anywhere where the Bible refers to fruits, it's talking about inward feelings. We don't see fruits, at least that I'm aware of, not that I've ever read. We don't see anywhere where fruits is exemplified as works. It's always an inward leaning of the heart, and we really see that distinction being made because of the fact that anybody can outwardly produce feeling or outwardly produce actions. Anybody can go to church on Sunday or Saturday for you Sabbatarians. Anybody can go to church, but that doesn't mean that the true motivation that is underlying that is a love for the Lord. And that is what we see exemplified here by Solomon, is that it says, notice it starts off the verse, Solomon loved the Lord, and he walked in his statutes. The two of those being separate, but together at the same time. They're joined, but they're distinct. So that was one thing that stood out. The next thing that stood out is probably the more famous part, and that's verse 5. It says, "In Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, Ask what I shall give thee. And Solomon said, Thou hast showed unto thy servant David my father great mercy, according as he has walked before thee in truth and in righteousness, and in uprightness of heart with thee. Thou hast kept for him this great kindness, and thou hast given him a son to sit on the throne, as it is this day. And now, O Lord my God, thou hast made thy servant king instead of David my father, and I am but a little child. I know not how to go out and how to come in." So basically, God appears to Solomon in a dream, and he says, look, ask of me what you will. And Solomon realizes the profound responsibility that he has, that he's responsible for these millions of people, and responsible for keeping them walking with the Lord. And he understands that this is a great responsibility. And he also understands that it is God that has placed him here, and that he didn't have to. He didn't get this position just because of who his father was, in that he was just born into king. He recognizes that it was God that kept David king. It was God that allowed Solomon to take over the throne, and it is God who will keep Solomon king and keep his way and his path. So he has this dream, and he asks the Lord, he's like, look, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm still young. I have to rule all these people. I need your help. I need your wisdom. I can't do this on my own. And it says here in verse 9, it says, Give therefore thy servant an understanding heart to judge thy people, that I may discern between good and bad. For who is able to judge this, thy so great a people? And then it says God's response, And the speech pleased the Lord, and Solomon asked this thing, or that Solomon had asked this thing. And God said unto him, Because thou hast asked this, or hast asked this thing, and hast not asked for thyself long life, neither hast asked riches for thyself, nor hast thou asked life, or asked for the life of thine enemies, but hast asked for thyself understanding to discern judgment. Behold, I have done according to thy words. Lo, I have given thee a wise and an understanding heart, so that there was none like before thee, neither after thee shall there arise any like unto thee. So basically God tells him here, because you asked me for the right thing, because you asked me for something that's not for yourself, not something that you can waste on yourself. And this is important because as many pastors and preachers and things like this that I hear talking about, us asking for God for our, things for ourselves, things that we can waste on ourselves. We see here that that's not the heart of God, that God respected Solomon because Solomon was given the opportunity to ask for whatever it was he wanted, and Solomon said, Teach me to be a good and righteous person for the people. So he asked for something outside of himself. He asked for something not to waste on himself but for others, and God rewarded him with that, and he said, Because you've asked me for that, I will not only give you that, but I will give you security and riches and things like this. And that says a lot about Solomon. It says a lot about what God is looking for in prayer and in our desires, and I think that that's really important, that we focus that the vast majority of our prayers are oftentimes things that are wasted on ourselves, as opposed to things that we can do for others. We see that was the heart of Jesus. We see that in this passage that this is God's heart. Clearly we see that it's God who gives Solomon the heart of understanding. It's God that gives Solomon the heart of wisdom. Namely, that these things are not things that we just kind of muster up ourselves in our own greatness. I mean, it is God who gives us these traits, these fruits, if you will, these things. And he gives Solomon these things. It says in this passage that he gives him a heart of wisdom, and that there is no one wiser, not then or in any kingdom ever, that Solomon was the wisest man, but he gives him this heart of wisdom because he was not going to waste it on himself. And that's something that's the key. God sees our heart. He sees what we want to do with it. He sees what we want to do with the fruits and with the gifts that he gives us, and then God gives us the abilities to be able to follow through with that. But as James said, ye have not because ye ask not, and you ask not because, or you ask and receive not because it's something that you want to waste on your own lusts. So I think it's in the first chapter of James. But anyway, the point being is that Solomon had a heart. He loved God. He walked in his ways, and that because he had a heart and a love for God, this exemplified himself, or this portrayed itself as something that that he did in honoring the people and judging the people righteously and keeping them, on the path, so to speak, almost like a pastor in his congregation. And God gave him the heart of wisdom to be able to walk through. So anyway, that was something that stood out to me in chapter 3. You guys kind of read through it and let me know your thoughts. All right, God bless.